Hey there, my name is Selassie Kendrick. I'm a senior at the University of Massachusetts Amherst and an intern for the New Music Alliance, a nonprofit organization dedicated to assisting the careers of artists in the Western New England area who write original music. Today I'll be interviewing Avery Sharpe, a renowned jazz double bassist and composer who was born in Valdosta, Georgia, and an alumni of the University of Massachusetts Amherst. He's a founder of the JK&M Records, an artist-owned record label established in 1994 as well. So how are you doing today, Avery?
Great, great. What about yourself?
I'm doing pretty good as well. So I kind of just wanted to hear a little bit more about your beginning and public performance. Could you tell us a little bit about your first time performing in public?
Oh my God. Ah, you have to go back to when I was, good Lord, 6 years old and in Savannah, Georgia. I was living in Savannah, Georgia. I'm number six of eight kids. And we did a church program. My sisters that are closest to me in age, 2 years older and then 4 years older than me, we did a performance at our church. And we sang "We Are Soldiers in the Army of the Lord." And so that was the first time I performed in public. I wasn't really scared because I really didn't really know what was going on.
Yeah.
I just thought it was something that you do. And then of course after that, I participated in church programs. And then when I became a teenager, I started playing electric bass and started performing um, in what we call rhythm and blues or funk bands or stuff from the 1960s Motown. And wow, I think I've never had a fear really of performing. Um, yeah, if I know the music, it's. I know a lot of people, they say they get nervous. I mean, you want people to like and accept what it is that you do, but no, that's it.
Yeah. Well, you've come a long way since then.
Yeah, you could say that.
So your song Harlem and the War to End All Wars, which was released in 2019, was recently inducted into the Essential Western New England Songbook as one of the best songs ever written by an artist in the Western New England area. So can you just give me your general feelings about having that song inducted in the songbook?
Well, it's quite an honor. Yeah, you just do work. You don't really think about trying to get rewards. You're just expressing yourself as an artist, and no, I'm thoroughly thrilled and honored.
Yeah, definitely. Could you give us some insight into the process of composing and recording that song?
Well, this song is part of an album that I recorded, a CD, and it's called 400, An African American Musical Portrait, um, sort of commemorating the 400 years that Africans and African Americans have been on the shores of the U.S., brought to the shores of the U.S. in 1619, and then the 400 year would have been 2019. So in thinking about that 400-year period, obviously it's not a celebration, it's just an acknowledgement of what transpired in this country. 250 years of slavery, and then another 100 years of Jim Crow, and trying to really keep slavery going, and then the next 50 years of sort of emergence, and then now the last 8 years, I guess, where people keep saying that we're trying to go back to the 1960s, and I keep telling people, no, they're trying to go back to the 1860s.
Mhm.
So Harlem and the War to End All Wars was the seventh song on the CD. So in other words, I go through a reason why I call it a portrait. I'm looking at the whole 400 years musically. The first tune is the arrival. What happened? How would that sound with us, with Africans being brought here? And then, what would be my first thought once I'm brought here, which is the next tune? Is there a way home? And so what I did was trying to figure out a way how to cram 400 years into 60 minutes worth of music. So if you listen to the entire CD, you kind of will hear different eras in like one song or one movement. And so when I got, I broke it up into 100-year increments. So from 1619 to 1719, that's the arrival period. And, let's try to see if we can get home. And then the second period would be, 1719 to 1819, which would kind of be a colonial period. And then from 1819 to 1919 would be the antebellum Civil War, new music coming along in the turn of the 19th and 20th century. And then from 1919 to 2019, which, you have World War II, you have the apex of the civil rights movement in the 1960s. And in the 1920s and 30s, part of that 1919 to 2019 period, you have the explosion of Harlem and the Harlem Renaissance. So that tune fits in that time period. That's why I call it Harlem and the war to end all wars. And for those of you who are old enough to know, the war to end all wars was World War One. It wasn't called World War One because they didn't know there was going to be a second one, 20 years later.
Right.
So I kind of crammed all that Harlem period, that World War One or the war to end all wars, because it was also a difficult period. I mean, Harlem was a great period for many African Americans because it was the mecca of Black life. A lot of great art came out of there during the Harlem Renaissance. Visual art, music, all everything. And so to me, that was a very special period. But you also had the political side, where you had the NAACP being formed. You had the Marcus Garvey movement. You had Booker T. Washington. So you had that political, racial movement that was happening at the same time. So that song kind of represents all that's going on during that period.
Wow, that's really interesting. So this is more of a general question, as opposed to just that song, but what do you enjoy the most about the music process, whether it's composing, recording, performing, or something else entirely?
All the above.
All of the above.
All the above. I'm probably the most comfortable. Well, it's hard to say. That's a man. I never really thought about that because like I said, I just think of them all as one. But if I had to pick one that I feel the most comfortable with and I'm always trying to do, I would say is performing.
Hmm.
Because that's, I'm a practitioner. I'm an artist. I have a skill, and I'm always wanting to practice that skill and put that skill forward. But another skill also is writing and recording, which you like to perform and you like to put that out into the ether, and that energy. There's nothing like live energy, because that's basically, as human beings, that's all we are really, is energy. When there's no more energy, you're gone, you're dead, or you go into another dimension or another form, be that physically or whatever. So performing is the immediate energy, that immediate energy transfer. You get I used to tell my kids, when they were younger, they're all grown now, and we have grandkids, 7 grandkids. But I used to tell them that when they were young, I said, Dad has the best job in the world. It's my job to do something different every time I perform. And with the audience, you have different audiences, so you get in a different energy. It's sort of like a circle. We give out the energy, the audience gives us the energy back, and we give more and more energy. And in a performance, that's where you get that. Recording, it's more of a sort of you still get that energy, but it's more focused inside the group. You don't get like an immediate response, so it's a little bit more sort of sterile. And then writing is fun because, well, actually, I'm in the middle of writing. Uh, I'm actually orchestrating 400 for a symphony performance with a symphony and a chorus and a choir and my sextet. So I'm actually doing that. That's with everything else I've got to do as well. I'm getting ready to leave for Vietnam on Tuesday. I've got some performances there. So it's fun to do that. And then when you hear the music back, especially with an orchestra or just in your group, when you've had something in your head and you spent this time by yourself formulating and what you think it's supposed to sound like, and then when you hear it, it's very satisfying and rewarding. And sometimes it sounds much better, live than what it did in your head. And then sometimes it sounds not as good uh, live as it did in your head. So it's a different thing. But the immediately that energy of performing, you can't. That would be the first thing.
Yeah, definitely. So kind of in the same vein, in terms of like a career retrospective, is there anything in particular that's happened over the course of your career that you would say you're especially proud of?
Hmm. Um, that those are really um different questions because I don't kind of think of it like that. It's once I've done something, I'm thinking about what I can do next. So I never really sort of rest and thinking that was a good project or
Yeah.
whatever. But I think this project 400, I think it's sort of a culmination of my writing and my performing, and so I'm really proud of the work. But then I have a new record coming out in June. On June 14th, it's called "I Am My Neighbor's Keeper," and it's based on trying to bring humanity back since it's been lost, but more lost in the last 8 years since the political situation in America is just is really crazy.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Well, if I were to ask you, since you're a Western New England artist, what is one thing that you like the most about the music scene or performing in Western New England specifically, if you could think of one?
well, for me, it would be um, that's sort of a dual thing. I would have to talk about the past and talk about the present as you asked. The past was at the unit when I went to the University of Massachusetts in the mid 1970s. It was an incredible, magical period in that we had some of the greatest artists, especially jazz artists. Well, all kind of artists, but especially jazz artists, which is what I was becoming at the time. We had Max Roach, who's one of the fathers of bebop. Played with Dizzy Gillespie, and just an incredible person. I had him as one of my professors, the great Archie Shepp, saxophonist and composer who played, with John Coltrane. He was, one of my professors and one of my influences, and actually the first person to take me to Europe. And then that's when other people on the level that I'm playing now started hearing about me. Horace Boyer, who's one of the foremost gospel historians and a gospel performer in his own right. He was and comes out of the same church that I came out of, the same denomination, um, the Church of God in Christ, the Sanctified Pentecostal Church. And he was one of my professors and mentors. And Fred Tillis, who helped start the jazz program at UMass, and later on became the director of the Fine Arts Center. Reggie Workman was one of my first bass teachers. He used to come up from Brooklyn a couple days a week. And so it was an incredible creative period. I mean, before his name became a bad word, Bill Cosby was there working on his master's and eventually, got his doctorate. So it was extremely creative period. And, a lot of people think that I live in New York. because, of my achievements. But I've always, people say, what's your favorite place on the planet? And it's always been Western Mass or Massachusetts because I really like Massachusetts culturally. It's much more open. It's much more creative. Um, so I find, Massachusetts in general and Western Mass very comfortable for artists. At least I feel that for myself and the artists that I know. And that's why I'm here, and that's what I feel that that has sort of been nurtured by that creative period that was happening from the 70s and has kind of sort of continued.
Yeah. So you talked about this a little bit earlier about your project coming up in June, but is there anything else that's coming up that our listeners can look forward to?
Um, well, yeah, the 400 project will be performed with the symphony and large choir in Springfield at the Springfield Symphony Hall with the Springfield Symphony on Juneteenth, which is June 19th, as part of the symphony has started doing a Juneteenth celebration. They started it last year, which I did with them. I did orchestrations of gospel tunes and some of my tunes as well. But this year it will be focused on my 400 project, 400 in the African American musical portrait. So that's coming up June 19th. So if you're in the area, it'll be, I think, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So I'm looking really, like I said, I'm looking forward to that. And I'm actually working on that as we speak right now, which is a great deal of work, but it's a great deal of fun.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's exactly what I've got coming up. I mean, I've got some tours coming up, but that's going to be in Europe, and that's going to be. Some people may know that I performed with the great McCoy Tyner, pianist, who was the pianist for John Coltrane. I performed and recorded for over 20 years with McCoy and did probably over 25 recordings. Anyway, he passed in 2020, the beginning of 2020, and we're doing a legacy band for him, which I'm the musical director. We'll be playing in Europe in July, and I think we have something happening again, another tour in the fall. But always trying to create. I've got another project that I'm thinking of doing, but I don't want to put it out there right now. But I will be working on that for yeah, for the next year or two.
Nice. Well, first of all, I'd like to thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me today. It's been a pleasure learning more about you and your career. So,
Well, thank you for having me, and appreciate the honor.
uh-huh. If anyone else is interested in learning more about the New Music Alliance, make sure to check us out at newmusicalliance.org. Until next time, I'll see you then.